We turn over 2 to 3 trillion cells every day. And that to me is the power. 95% of our society is deficient in omega-3 fatty acids. Exercise plus nutrients plus sleep equals a well-oiled mitochondria. Hey guys, it's Matt. Welcome back to another Rest, Eat, Move podcast. Today we're going to do a 3-part series. We're going to start with part 1, and part 1 is cellular health. You may have heard us talk about our 3 principles, and that's what we're going to do. So we're going to do a 3-part series over the next 3 weeks. Part 1 is cell health, or principle number 1. Number 2 is pH balance. And number 3, the source. And these are what we call our bedrocks of on-target living. These are the principles, or if you like to think about it as the science behind some of the art. And these 3 principles are critical when we start to ask, why is the food target designed this way? Or what's the fastest way to get the body to self-correct? Or how do I know if eating this is better than that? Or if I'm trying to tackle maybe some symptoms, what's the right approach to do it for long-term health? And these 3 principles will never change. We've been talking about them. I've been talking about them since I started with on-target living over 15 years ago. I've been hearing them from my father for the last 40 years. They will not change. They're like gravity. And I think sometimes we miss some of the opportunities from our health and what the body can do because we forget about these 3 principles. And again, it's cell health, pH balance, and the source. And so part 1, we're going to talk about cell health, or principle number 1. And this is where everything begins. Our entire health and vitality and energy begins at the cell level. And so I like to look at it a couple different ways. We can look at that thriving we've been talking about, and we need to make those cells as healthy and vibrant and producing as much energy as possible that's thriving. And then also we can look and say, well, if we don't pay attention to our cells, if we damage our cells, if we reduce our immune system and create a lot of inflammation, these cells can create issues or disease, or not able to kind of handle certain bacteria, or not able to handle certain viruses, or maybe too much toxicity. And again, this all leads potentially down to the fastest, scariest disease we have, which is called cancer. And so when we look at cell health, every organ, every system is made of cells. The first key is there's 50 trillion cells in the human body. And as I was preparing for this, you may have heard me talk about kind of the overview of cell health, but I thought this was kind of interesting. The lifespan of our cells. So you have these neutrophils. These are your white blood cells. These are kind of your first line of defense. These cells only live for 1 to 2 days. And then you have skin cells, 2 to 3 weeks. Your intestinal lining cells, these can last 3 to 5 days. These are kind of the fastest turning cells in the human body, which can be great. I'll get to that. And then you have red blood cells that live for 120 days. Platelets, 8 to 10 days, liver cells, 300 to 500 days. And then you have cells that live potentially forever. These are your brain neurons. These are your heart muscles. These are some of the cells in your eyes. And so it's fascinating. We have all these cells. We're made of cells, 50 trillion cells. But I always like to explain, we turn over 2 to 3 trillion cells every day. And that to me is the power. Because let's just say we're having digestive health issues. Very common symptom, but yet we now know we can turn over those cells in our gut lining every 3 to 5 days. That means we have potential to correct, or go the other way. If we continue to beat our body up, put the wrong foods, lack exercise, too much stress, the cells can start to move the wrong way because the cells regenerate, they copy, they duplicate. And as we age, that's what the aging process is, those cells get a little older and tired, less functioning. And the key is how do we keep those vibrant cells long term? So when we're thinking aging, so we're going to talk about aging today at the cell level. Energy is going to be a big topic. ATP. Immune system. Our immune system is so critical both ways. So when we have a healthy immune system, it makes those cells healthier. When our cells are healthier, it makes the immune system healthier. And then disease. So aging, energy, immunity, and disease. We'll talk about antioxidants, omega-3 fats, vitamins, exercise, sleep, hydration, and then this thing called the mitochondria, which is your kind of your car engine inside the cell. And so let's paint the picture. Let's think of each cell in our body, 30 to 50 trillion cells in the human body. Each cell is a tiny city. And inside that city are different components. We need all those components. But then we have this energy or this power plant. This is your mitochondria. That's what we're going to get into. But when I paint this picture of these tiny cities, and we're going to talk about overall one cell, everything begins from a cell standpoint at the barrier called the cell membrane. This is what controls what goes in the cell, what comes out of the cell. And so in my opinion, the most important part of every city or every cell is the cell membrane. You want this to be soft and permeable or flexible and fluid. And when you kind of think about, let's go to the real life, well, what is the cell membrane made out of? This is going to be a critical piece to figuring out how do we make these cells healthier. Well, it's made up of water and lipids, which are fats, specifically omega-3 fats. And what happens is our body needs these essential fats to make that cell membrane soft and permeable. It allows nutrients to penetrate and toxins to be eliminated. Allows those cells to be more flexible and fluid, and it prevents them from becoming damaged. And so I always think of this stat, and it comes back to the cell health, and I just don't think we think it's as important as it is. 95% of our society is deficient in omega-3 fatty acids. And now we know that these omega-3 fatty acids make every tiny city vibrant, or it's the beginning stages of becoming vibrant. And if it's not in our food system, or if it's not in our body, the cell membrane becomes stiff and rigid, or think of it as disease, aging, damage. And so if 95% of our society is deficient in omega-3 fats, a real critical, important step for most people to make their cells healthier is to consume omega-3 fatty acids. Chia seeds, dates, fish, cod liver oil, fish oil in general, getting the appropriate amount of omega-3 fatty acids, flax seeds, chia seeds. But it's interesting. We know this. You throw this into Google, you throw this into any book that's talking about cellular health. These omega-3s increase the flexibility of the cell membrane. They help with making those signals that those cells and hormones are sending more efficient, more effective. As I look into cancer, and they're looking at cancer research on both ends, how to prevent cancer and how to cure cancer. Well, when we think about prevention of cancer, our most powerful defense on cancer is these things called killer T cells. This is your immune system. And so what the killer T cell does, it helps to recognize damaged cells or cancer cells, and it kills them. When you go deeper into the weeds and you say, well, how can it do it better? Or what can we do in our own world to improve this? We now know that those T cells also need omega-3 fatty acids to not only make their signaling more accurate, but it also makes those T cells more flexible to maneuver in the body. I think that's so fascinating, but I'll repeat it. 95% of us are deficient in omega-3 fats. Or you can look at it another way. 95% of us are going to have inefficient cellular health because we're deficient in a nutrient. At the end of the day, our body is designed to do what it's designed to do. Our job is to make sure it's in the right environment, if it's in the right position. So if you're a coach and you're coaching a basketball team and you have the center at the top of the court by the three-point line, you're not in the right position. And that's what the importance of omega-3s are. It's not that they're a miracle. It's that they're designed, that nutrients designed to help make that function of the cell better, make more flexible, help with the signaling. Omegas regulate the inflammation, and that's another thing. So this means that the T cells respond more accurately, appropriately, without excess inflammation. So one of the benefits of omega-3s, and I've talked about this, is it reduces inflammation. But when you think about it a little bit differently, it actually helps to enhance the signaling. So it's like tagging with a red X these damaged cells so the T cells can kill them. Now, if they're in camouflage, because there's so much inflammation, the T cells get overwhelmed. They may start to damage the wrong cells. And this is where we're starting to see the explosion of all these diseases and illnesses. Cancer's at its all-time high. Inflammation's at its all-time high. So again, to start today, we're talking about the cell membrane. We know that every cell membrane is required to have omega-3 fatty acids to make it soft and permeable. Type 2 diabetes, cancer, obesity, low energy, toxicity all begins with a stiff and rigid cell membrane. And so we have to bring omega-3s to the party. But there's more to it, and you're hearing a lot about this from influencers and podcasters and scientists and doctors. There's great information out there about mitochondria health. And I think when you throw that word out, it sounds sophisticated and you sound smart and it's important. But to me, I like to make it really simple. The mitochondria is the car engine or the power pack of the cell or the power plant of the city. And so mitochondria equals energy. And I found this really interesting graphic. And again, with the internet and all the access to information, there's a lot more creativity around information. And so exercise plus nutrients plus sleep equals a well-oiled mitochondria. It's a great way to think about it. Or food broken down into glucose or fatty acids light the fire for the mitochondria, the power plant, to produce ATP, which is energy. And I love that because when we give the body, the cells, the right raw material, it starts to light these fires to create this energy. We think about it in business. We talk about energy. We talk about we need different ways to energize and power our world, electricity. But I don't think we think about the human body the same way. Yet people are walking around low energy, not feeling their best, not a lot of drive, not a lot of oomph. Well, that mitochondria is not functioning at its best. You're meant to be a thoroughbred, and this is a workhorse that's been overworked. It's tired. Now, when you think of energy, it really starts with this ATP. And so mitochondria, in the mitochondria, and you have 100 to 1,000 mitochondria in each cell, creates this ATP. And this ATP is where we produce our energy. Yet I would say it's the most elusive part of our health. People say, well, I have energy or I don't have energy. How much energy do you have? How much energy could you have? We don't really know. But yet the science inside the body, there's a lot going on. And so you have this thing called the Krebs cycle. You have different ways that ATP is being produced inside that mitochondria. But all we need to know is the mitochondria creates energy. And the key with that is after we make that cell membrane, we make that perimeter the way it's designed to be functioning, this is when we have to start feeding that mitochondria the right fuel. So that's when you look at the food target, it's not about calories. It's not about how much you eat. Now, you can overeat and you need to eat enough, but it really begins with quality, the types of nutrients. Because your mitochondria, your power pack requires high quality fuel if you want it to create the right energy. And so that's why it's so important to eat the right quality food versus counting calories or looking at nutrients. Just because it's 50 grams of protein does not mean that mitochondria wants that 50 grams of whey protein, candy bar, protein bar, whatever concoction that you put into it. So energy is really important. It happens at the mitochondria level. And this is kind of the science. When people say they don't have the right energy, I got to look and help them make that cell healthier. Now, the other point, it's not just about fuel. So we need calories. And again, it's not about counting calories. It's about consuming food or food with nutrients to make the ATP. But exercise also creates energy for the mitochondria, creates blood flow. It starts to create some of this energy. And then sleep is really important because sleep is where we detoxify. So deep sleep is when our hormones come out. They start to communicate better. Growth hormone comes out, starts to produce and repair and fix. And then REM sleep, but this is where we have this cellular waste detox. And so when you think about the city, and you think about a city, it's vibrant and it's functioning, but it also has waste. That's why you need the garbage dump, and that's why you need the sewer system. And so we have to understand we also have to eliminate the cellular waste. REM sleep is one of the ways that we do that. Your lymphatic system is another way that we eliminate waste. And that's why, again, exercise can be so powerful. It's this pump mechanism. So when you move your arms, when you're creating blood flow under your armpit, your groin, different parts of the body have this lymphatic system. This is your sewer system, but it doesn't have a pump. It has to be activated. And then REM sleep is a great way to flush those toxins. So, when we kind of go back and we say, okay, the cells are so powerful, but we get so fixated on genetics. I think most of our research is all around the genetics, the RNA, the DNA. It's interesting. It's fascinating. I have 2 kids that have blue eyes. My wife and I don't have blue eyes. Yet my dad has blue eyes, and my wife's dad had blue eyes. How does that work? Well, that's part of genetics. There's a different equation. There's a percentage. There's a probability. We have different genes. We express some genes, and then we can turn off other genes. Some of us have really healthy genes, vibrant genes. Some of us have some genes we want to keep at bay. Some of us were dealt a full house, and some of us were dealt, we're drawn for different cards. But it's not about the genetics. 15% of our health is genetic related. We have a lot more control. Now we understand epigenetics, and epigenetics are what happened outside of that cell, your lifestyle, which lead to a better cell membrane, which lead to a better mitochondria that then start to push on the right buttons or turn off the wrong ones. It's called epigenetics. We have a lot more impact on our RNA and DNA than we ever thought. I think that's the most important thing that we can understand. Our lifestyle, our choices help to dictate a lot of our health because our health begins at the cell level. You answer this question, when you're born, most humans are born with perfect health. And so the job is, what kind of lifestyle, what kind of environment can we do to sustain that and have vibrant aging? We're all going to age. We're all going to die. But the key is how do we keep that at the level that I think many of us want? And so when we kind of turn it back and we say, well, the cells are so important. Yeah, they're really important. And our lifestyle choices, again, like I said, exercise plus nutrients plus sleep equals a well-oiled mitochondria, equals a well-oiled cell. Stress plus junk food plus toxins equal a bogged up system. Now, the crazy thing about the cells, about the human body, is we can handle it. We have these defense mechanisms, these T cells, these killer cells, these neutrophils. Yet if it's on overduty, high alert, overtime, can't really recognize the villains, this is when disease and illness breaks us down. But another piece to this equation is we have these things called bacteria, your microbiome, and they communicate with your cells. Technically, we probably have more bacteria, most of it in our gut, our large intestine, than we do cells. And so when people say, what's a human? Well, you could say it's probably more bacteria than cells, but this communication happens. And so when you think about the cell, it'd be bad for me, or it would be something that I would need to talk about, but your gut is also a critical, important part for cellular health, because your gut creates these pre and probiotics, this good microbiome that can communicate and can break down and absorb these different nutrients. And so it's not always just about putting the right fuel in the body. It's making sure that the absorption is happening, or you're taking the right nutrients and directing in the right spot. And so gut health is really important on top of cell health. One of the things that I really am not a fan of, I'm not a fan of hand sanitizer, antibacterial soap, overusing it. Occasionally you want to use it for different situations. I have 3 kids. Trust me, they're disgusting sometimes with their hands. We got to clean them up. Maybe you're on the run or in the car. But we're over sterilizing things which kill these good bacteria, which we are required for vibrant health. And so the gut is really important, making sure that gut lining, that gut bacteria is healthy. And like I said, we turn over the gut lining cells faster than any cells in the human body. That is, to me, fantastic. That means we have control. And so as I kind of wrap this up, principle number 1 is our health begins at the cell level. It's not about calories, it's about quality. Because we're going to treat our cells like a city. We're going to make sure the membrane is healthy, omega-3 fats, water, From there, we're going to feed the body the right fuel, the high quality fuel. It's going to start to rev up that engine. It's going to rev up that power plant of the city called the mitochondria. It's going to start to create more ATP, more energy, the right energy. We're going to exercise to help flush the body, raise the circulation, stimulate the mitochondria. We're going to sleep, which helps you detoxify, but also bring some hormones to the party. And then we're going to look at these foods. There's 4 food categories or nutrients that really are going to create vibrant cell health. Number 1 is folate. So folate are anything with the color green. Now, we've heard of folic acid, which is synthetic. No need to take folic acid. Folate, which are greens, spinach, kale, leafy greens, spirulina, chlorella, wheatgrass. These are going to be your greens. Folate is incredibly important for cellular health. Number 2 is B vitamins, specifically B12. And again, this can come from some of your greens, specifically chlorella. It's going to come from the egg yolk, fish, meat. And if you're vegetarian, this is one of the reasons why I'm not a huge fan of being vegetarian unless you're really trying to not eat animal products for some belief. And that's okay too. But you get a lot of those B vitamins, specifically B12, from eggs, fish, and meat. And then some of your ancient grains. And then iron. And so consuming, again, some of these high quality meats gives you some of that iron. These are really critical for your cells. And then, like I said, I think the secret nutrient most people are missing for vibrant cell health are omega-3 fats, specifically cod liver oil because of the vitamin D3. And we now know the impact of D with your immune system, which then is part of this whole equation of cellular health. Again, everything begins at the cell level. Aging, energy, immunity, and disease. And I have the 4th one in that category. That's called survival. We want to have this first line of defense. That's your cells. That's your immune system. Yet once we make sure that we're feeding those cells and trying to live a vibrant, healthy lifestyle, aging properly, creating the vibrant energy, building your immune system, I really think most of us have this amazing armor that can protect us from disease and illness. The definition of health is to be absent of disease and illness. I think that's the baseline of health. My role when I'm trying to teach people and motivate them and educate them, I think the definition of health is to be your most optimal self. And that's vibrant aging, vibrant energy, and amazing immune system. Our health begins at the cell level. We have 50 trillion cells. We turn over 2 to 3 trillion cells each day. That means in a matter of a month, 3 months, 6 months, the human body has an amazing ability to heal, self-correct, and like I like to focus on, thrive. We'll see you for part 2, pH balance. And remember, these 3 principles in this sequence are like gravity. They'll never change.